Hello everyone, welcome to Asura Psych, and today we're going to be continuing the series on the archetypes of the types. And today we're going to be discussing the INTP and how it relates to the scientist archetype. You'll notice that a lot of characters that are typically scientists in media and in fiction are typically typed as INTPs, and there's a reason for this, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get into it. So why is the INTP the scientist? Well, as usual, we need to first look at the cognitive function stack of the INTP. The INTP leads with introverted thinking, they have secondary extroverted intuition, tertiary introverted sensing, and repressed extroverted feeling. So this means that they're a type that leads with thinking, they lead with a judging function. And introverted thinking is typically characterized by wanting to build an internal framework of knowledge and understanding, which is why the INTP tends to align themselves in subjects or towards subjects that allow them to learn more about the world or more about how things work in general. And TI is going to be somewhat obsessive over gaining as much information as they can and truly taking all of it in and understanding it. Combine this with extroverted intuition, the secondary process of the INTP, and you're going to have a type that leads with wanting to know how the world works. They're going to lead with understanding, but their secondary function, extroverted intuition, is going to direct them to want to explore the world and tend to be creative and theoretical about the world around them. And this is why INTPs in fiction and even in the real world tend to end up in positions that allow them to work in the theoretical sciences, such as astronomy and things of that nature, because they tend to have a theoretical approach to how the world works and how things can be understood. And when they need to understand something further, they're going to be the first type who are going to learn by experimentation. They're going to set up some sort of experiment or something that's going to allow them to further understand the world instead of just kind of observing it. Because of their ability to understand things and their desire to learn more about the world, you typically see INTPs characterized by intelligence. And while this is true in some sense, not every INTP is going to be some hyper-intelligent scientist, of course. But you typically see them in positions that allow them to use their understanding of the world to kind of further the world around them or help them discover something that they want to learn about. And that's why the INTP is typically seen as the scientist, because this is what a scientist does. They are experimenting, they're working with some sort of information to kind of understand how things work. This differs from the INTJ, who has extroverted thinking, in that the INTP typically is experimental and they have this stronger desire for understanding compared to the INTJ, whereas the INTJ is typically trying to do one specific task. They're trying to achieve one certain goal, whereas the INTP is typically trying to understand something at its very nature or why it is the way it is. And this is why INTPs tend to do better with things like details and information, because not only do they have extroverted intuition, but they also have introverted sensing in their function stack. This combination of introverted thinking, extroverted intuition, and introverted sensing allows them to be an extremely detail-focused type that is going to understand things very well. INTPs are really the kinds of type who can understand and comprehend lots of information, and they can typically do it very quickly. And this is how they differ from, say, the INTJ, who typically sees information and knowledge as a tool for them to achieve some sort of goal. So something that makes this archetype interesting is its natural inability to naturally communicate with others on an emotional level. And this is something that you see with the archetypal scientist and something that you also typically see with the INTP. Because the INTP leads with introverted thinking, they repress extroverted feeling, which means that they're not naturally going to be aware of the emotions of the people around them. It's something that they're going to have to put active and conscious effort into noticing. And this is why the INTP typically struggles when it comes to relating with others on an emotional level. This is not because the INTP doesn't care about the emotions of others or that they're heartless. It's because they lead with thinking, they lead with logic. So when they approach a new problem or situation, they approach it from a sense of logic or a place of logic or a place of understanding through a logical sense, through how they interpret the world. And this isn't something that feelings typically do. Feelings come from a place more so of values. So INTPs don't typically view new problems or situations through a values perspective like you might see with the INFP. The INTP is instead approaching a new situation through logic, through introverted thinking. And in so, they ignore the value aspect of the problem. They've repressed the feeling side of things. And this is why you see the archetypal scientist and the INTP struggling to relate with others on that emotional level. One famous example of this would be Albert Einstein. And if you've ever seen the show Genius, there's a season on Einstein, you can see how Einstein was unable to naturally interact with others, and he kind of misread the body language of others and the implications of his actions even though he thought he was doing right because he was approaching problems from a logical standpoint. Because human elements aren't logical. Psychology overall isn't directly logical. That's why it's more so of an abstract science. This is why the INTP is going to struggle with their relations with others, because people aren't logical in that sense. They're not logical in the sense that you can put in one specific command and get out another command like you might be able to get with a computer. All right, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this overview on the INTP and its relation to the scientist archetype. INTPs are interesting because you're likely to find them in the MBTI community. Because MBTI is an abstract thinking type of topic, it's something that you would typically find NT types being interested in. But it's more so interesting to the INTP because it's a classification of humans and human behavior. And this is going to be valuable to the INTP, who is going to want to understand other people. And this is going to allow them to more naturally interact with people, because if they can understand where people are coming from and why people think the way they think, the INTP may be better off at interacting with others in a way that is more natural. And you might think to yourself, well, that doesn't seem very natural if they have to think about how other people are understanding the world and how they're interacting because of their values and their feelings. But to a type that leads with thinking, this is what they might have to do to understand other people. And this isn't a flaw, in my opinion. It's just a hurdle that they're going to have to overcome as a thinking type. All right, everybody, this has been Asura at Asura Psych. I just want to remind you that I do personality typing sessions, and you can find out more information about that in the description box below. Have a good one.